Welcome to the Real Freedom Podcast, where we inspire you to pursue your passion to gain time and financial freedom through opportunities in real estate. I'm your host, Mike Swenson. Let's get some real freedom together. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Real Freedom Podcast, where we talk about building time and financial freedom through opportunities in real estate. And today we're going to talk a little bit about a few different things. So number one, we're going to be talking about notes and note investing. But in addition to that, we're also going to be talking about the lens of, deciding how to choose investment spaces, kind of narrowing your search because there's so much stuff that's out there. And then in addition to that too, being able to market and grow your persona and be able to kind of grow your influence. And so today's guest is a master at all of these things. And so we've got Scott Carson here. Scott, if you haven't heard of him, have probably known him as the note guy in some relation to notes. So he's been in mortgage finance and banking since 2001 and an active real estate investor since 2002, buying notes on commercial properties, residential properties. He is the CEO and founder of the Austin, Texas-based real estate company We Close Notes, host of the Note Closer Show podcast, Note Night in America, featured speaker, trainer, coach. And then another cool thing is a couple of cool things, almost maxed out at 30,000 LinkedIn connections and 7,000 plus subscribers on YouTube. So you also have a large social media following and over 1,700 videos on your YouTube channel. And that's amazing stuff. And then another cool stat, has bought over $1 billion in distressed debt in your career. So Scott, you've been around for a long time in the real estate and the real estate investing space. So welcome to the show.
Well, Mike, honored to be here with your audience today. Yeah, I guess you can't really tell it, but the gray hair is starting to fill in where the blonde used to be for the most part. So
the cap hides it.
The cap definitely hides it, and keeping my hair cut short makes it look a lot better than versus the salt and pepper that's popping up. But yeah, no, honored to be here today, and just looking forward to giving to your audience. And thank you for having me today.
So why don't we get started and just share a little bit about your background, how you got into the real estate space, and then obviously the last 20 plus years in the real estate space and where we're at today.
Yeah, no problem. So I was like many people, my first foray into real estate was buying my first house in 2002. I'd been married, college sweetheart out of college. I was got a business management degree. I was in finance, making good money, bought our first house. This is going back to 2002. So if you could fog a mirror a lot of times at good credit, you get this stuff. So the realtor was a friend of ours, like, hey, you guys got great credit. You thought about being a real estate investor? And I was like, yeah, we like those fictional TV shows on HG, Flip This House and stuff like that. And I grew up in a small town, and my dad owned a local hardware store. So it's not anything I haven't worked on in my house. So I felt very confident. I was like, oh yeah, I'd love to be a landlord. How do we do that? And well, you can get financing 100%. I'm like, let's do it. So we bought 2 more investment properties, relatively quickly, 100% financing. Put a couple renters in there who were working at Dell Computers. We were feeling like, hey, this is going to be great. Well, 3 months into this, I show up in my office, and they're literally closing my office location. They're literally shutting down the whole branch. And I'm like, oh shit. Okay. I'm like, okay, we'll figure something out. I'm kind of marketable. Well, then I go home, and we're trying to figure things out. And then within a matter of a week or two, both my tenants got laid off from their job at Dell Computer. And I'm like, and so this is the time there was going a lot of layoffs here in Austin, Texas. Market was still hot, but I went from being a excited investor, landlord, to being a deadbeat borrower, not being able to make 6 mortgage payments because my wife at the time, now ex-wife, she was a private school teacher, only making like 35, 36 grand a year. And so we were really in a difficult, tight spot, like a lot of folks do. Well, we were able to get rid of the 2 investment properties. Thank God. We did a loan mod on my primary residence. And for a couple of years, I just licked my wounds. I'm like, I got kicked in the teeth. I don't want to do this again. This is not what the show's promised. You know what I mean? But I still wanted to do it. So I got back into financing. Was a banker, mortgage banker for Bank One, and then JP Morgan Chase was one of the top bankers, and still was interested in this. I like what I was doing. I was making good money as a banker, but it wasn't ultimately what I wanted to do. And a buddy of mine that I worked with was starting a mortgage company, and he came to me and said, hey, Scott, I need some help. I'm getting overwhelmed. I'm going to all these different investment seminars with a couple of these investors here in Austin, all across the country. I'd like, if you want, I'd love to. I was like, maybe. So I went to lunch, and these 2 investors that were flipping properties and creating notes and teaching note investing and speaking on the circuit across the country in front of thousands every other week, I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. And after we got our assets out of a sling this couple of years, we were kind of back to par, back to normal. And I went home and told my wife at the time, she's like, well, you know what? You can always go back to banking. So let's do it. So made a jump. 2 weeks later, I was in LA at the LA Marriott, basically pitching mortgages to investors, a room of 1,500. And that was basically 2004. From 2004 to 2008, I ran a mortgage company. We did a lot of loans, and I also got a lot of education on investing the right way, not the traditional go out and buy for a property, but learn creative financing, owner financing, how to raise private capital. I also had a guy who was he still is a marketing genius. I got to spend a couple of years with as a mentor. And in 2008, when everything was, going crazy, and in this time frame, I'd been bought some more rentals, was doing some rehabs, raising some capital, doing some subject to deals or wholesaling deals. I basically left the mortgage industry, sold my part of it for $1 to my buddy Boyd, and became a 100% full-time real estate investor at the time, and started buying notes because that's what one of my mentors was teaching me, and the people that I learned from taught it. And that's basically all that I've focused on the last, it's hard to believe 16, 17 years now, is just buying distressed debt from banks. And when I say buying notes, I'm literally buying the mortgage debt on residential commercial properties, often at a big discount because it's where the borrowers aren't paying. I call it, I'm my own version of The Big Short a little bit, if you like movies out there. I'm the Christian Bale character looking at spreadsheets all day and then sending people out to look at property. But that's what I bought. I bought over $1 billion in debt, closed on thousands of first mortgages on residential commercial properties, apartments, hotels, single family homes, condos, office space, any type of asset class. We basically bought the debt on it, and been very busy with that. And we've leveraged, like you mentioned a little bit before, one of the things that's helped me along that way is that we really embrace the marketing side of social media and email blasts and video along the way, and podcasts and stuff like that. That's really helped me carve out a niche and be very, very focused on what I do today. That's why I'm called the Note Guy, because that's all I really focus on. So that's the quarter answer to your nickel question.
Now, for people that are wanting to know a little bit more about kind of that note side, I get the idea of buying debt. So why would a bank be looking to move that? And then what's the opportunity for you? So I think part of where we're going to go here is talking about, as an investor, somebody that wants to get into investing, there's so many different vehicles that you can invest in. And obviously you've seen value in the note. So what is it here that is appealing to you, and how can you take that and make money off of it?
The great question. The reason banks would be glad to sell notes off, now, not every bank's going to sell them. Like, I had a guy from California call me this morning, about 30 minutes before we got on here. Hey, I got a note with Bank of America. I want to call and see about doing a short pay. I'm like, Bank of America is not going to sell you a one-off note. They're too big. It's not worth their time. If you can write a $50 million check, then they would talk to you. But at this point, Bank of America, Chase City, you're not going to buy from the top 5 or 10 banks. Just not going to happen. Maybe a commercial note, yes, but a single family residential note, no. But here's what you have to realize. Every bank out there has bad paper or notes where people are not paying. They're more likely, banks are more likely to sell off a commercial note than a residential note, because there's not a lot of government insurance and backing on a commercial debt. But every state has a different foreclosure time frame or redemption period. Like here in Texas, where I'm at, it's the fastest foreclosure state in the country. I foreclose, if somebody's 90 days late on a mortgage, the bank can foreclose in 21 days and take it to auction and take the property back if the borrower doesn't file a foreclosure. Now, up in Minnesota, where you're at, takes a little bit longer, and then there's a 1-year redemption period after a foreclosure that drags things out further. So a bank may not give me a big a discount here on a note in Texas, in Austin, Texas, but if it's in Austin, Minnesota, where my mom is originally from, they would give me a bigger discount because it's a longer time frame. So with banks, it's all about the velocity of capital. Banks don't actually want to own real estate. They want to get money in and get your dollar in the bank and then lend that out 15 to 50 times to other lenders. And if they've got a $100,000 mortgage sitting there that's not producing income, it literally costs them 8 to 10 times in fees and what they can't produce. And also, for every dollar amount that they have in bad debt, they've got to hold a bunch of money back in reserves that they can't lend out as well. So a bank would rather sell me a note at 50, 60 cents on the dollar, get that capital to them, go out and lend it, give me a discount and that gives me the opportunity then to either reach out to the homeowner and try something different, cash for keys, modify the loan, or maybe the bank wouldn't have done it to begin with, because I'm a fresh voice, fresh face to the borrower. I mean, there's not a lot of emotion with it. And then if the borrower won't play ball, then I don't mind buying, taking it to foreclosure and selling it, or taking it back and keeping it if I want to, because I got it at a discount that helps incentivize me to hold it for a period of time. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So essentially you're kind of taking on the bank's problems and problem solving through that, whereas the bank's not going to want to take the time or spend the money to be able to figure that out. You're able to do that on a smaller basis.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the fact that I know different markets, and we've got vendors, and every state's a little bit different. We've got different investors and teams and stuff like that across the country to evaluate stuff. And banks don't want to rehab property. That's not that's not their cup of tea. They don't want to own a rental property, even though some of them are starting to get in that foray, like Chase is looking at buying rental portfolios these days. But for the most part, a property is a non-performing asset to them that's not doing anything. It's just really a liability more so. They want to own mortgage debt. That they want to understand the leverage power of, borrowing people's money at 0.01% in savings account and lending it out at 6 to 8% in mortgages, or 18% credit card debt, stuff like that. And they've got the stuff that, like, I can go in and cherry pick. I may get a listing of 100 notes. I'll make offer on 50. I'll probably settle at 10 after I perform my due diligence period, and then go from there. But it's really creating a win-win, because they do get rid of their problem children, and I can turn those lemons into lemonade by working out with them.
Well, and too, just for people that don't understand this, it's a message I've tried to communicate to my database is, when you go put your money in the bank, you may view real estate as being too risky of an investment opportunity, but you go put your money in the bank's turning around and putting it into real estate. So they're doing that. And so what if you thought about taking the middleman out of it, which is the bank, and go invest in real estate yourself? Now, you're still going to help, bank's still going to take on some of that mortgage for you. You're not going to pay cash. I mean, you can pay cash, but that's what they're doing. And so in this case, you're just kind of picking off, some of the bad apples here and working your way through that. But that's why real estate investing is such a good opportunity, because it's what banks do all day long. They invest in real estate. And so why not open up your eyes a little bit and consider investing in real estate too?
Exactly. And I'm so glad you said that too, because honestly, Jesus saves, everybody else has to invest. Okay. If you're putting money in a bank, you're never going to hit your numbers that you need to do it, because you're not going to get their type of returns. You've got to educate yourself and find a avenue, real estate investing or some sort of investment that you're comfortable with, that meets your risk parameters and experience level and knowledge level, to go out and make it. And making, when I was a banker, here's the biggest thing: going from a banker to an investor mindset, your eyes are wide open, like, oh my God, we were all scammed. You know what I mean? The bank scammed us all. And they've done it for centuries, saying, 1 to 4% safe, 4 to 8%, that's moderate, 8 to 12, that's risky. Anything above 12 is risky. Well, banks, they do that to brainwash us into understanding that, oh, we'll just give you the money and get 1%. And they're like sitting there, like, lending it out at 8% on a mortgage. Well, they're not making 7% difference in the arbitrage. They're making 700% difference in the arbitrage. And that's the great thing. What I love about you doing with Real Freedom too, is that you're teaching people, like, hey, I'll give me the money at 6 to 8%. I'll give you an above average return. It's actually, won't say it's safe, because we don't say those words are guaranteed, but it's secured by a property that I'm picking up at a discount, or a note that I'm, at 50 cents on the dollar, it's going to return a cash flow. And if the borrower doesn't perform, then we foreclose, and we take the asset back. So that's what I love you. But you just got to, you got to learn, be educated on what you're doing, because the banks will just take you and give you as little as possible to take in, so that they can, put arbitrage and the power of above, the power of 72 in their wheelhouse, not in yours.
Well, and too, I mean, a lot of times people look at a stock market as maybe a stock market's safer than real estate or something like that. But you're one bad story, one bad news story, one bad apple in that company away from something happening, stock prices drop too. And so there's there is a lot of risk with that as well. Whereas a mortgage is backed by real estate. And so you at least have, like, even in your case, right? Yeah, if the person stops paying, you still got the property and you've got some options of what you can do with it. So let's talk about maybe an example or two that you have of, you picked up a note. What goes through your mind then in terms of, you'd mentioned kind of cash for keys, something like that, fix it up. Think about kind of that lens that you're thinking through of, how do I recover this asset, or how do I turn this into something that's distressed to now we're good? Maybe give an example or two of how you work through that process.
Great question, Mike. So whenever I get a listing of notes, they call it a tape. It's basically just a spreadsheet that gives me the address, the borrower's name, their payment history. Sometimes I'll even get their social security number, all the numbers on this, all the details of the note, interest rate, payment history. Sometimes I'll even see notes on there from the actual servicing company, the lender, of, hey, the borrower is trying to do this, they lost their job, yeah, whatever. I literally get to see beneath the kimono. If it gives you a bit of an idea.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll look at and see, okay, first thing I look at is the asset occupied or is it vacant? That's one of my first big parameters. There's states I don't buy in. I just get rid of it because it takes forever to foreclose if I have to take it to foreclosure. So like New York, New Jersey, I don't buy in because it's long. It's 2 to 3 years to foreclose in those states. I don't buy in Chicago, Illinois, because it's a very long time to foreclose. And don't get me started on Crook County over there. It's difficult if you don't live there, okay? But I get rid of a few states that I don't buy in. I get rid of a few states where the taxes are through the roof. They make it hard to make money if you have to take a property back. So then after we narrow that list down to like our 30 favorite states, then we'll look at occupancy. Because if I'm buying a non-performing note, my biggest bang for buck, my biggest ROI isn't actually to take the property back most of the time. If the interest rate's at a decent interest rate and I could get that borrower back on track and making payments for 12 months, that's the best ROI I'm often going to see. And I don't have to put any work into the property. I don't have to put any attorney fees into it. I literally pay a servicing company. They reach out to the borrower can start paying on time again. We'll do a forbearance agreement, move their payments to, they're 12 months they're behind, over to the face amount. And now our goal is to hold that note for at least 12 months. And after 12 months of on-time payments, then we could turn around and sell that note if we bought it at 50 cents on the dollar, which is pretty normal. We can then turn around and sell it at 80, 85 cents, maybe even 90 cents on the dollar back to Wall Street or other investors. And I don't have to do any rehab or any property management. Okay.
So just to clarify on that for the average person kind of following you here, you get this because they've been behind. You're saying, okay, let's just focus on today, start paying on time. You're kind of just recouping that and saying, okay, now we're showing consistent payments moving forward. Let's forget about the past a little bit. You're now paying consistently. Okay, now you've essentially kind of shined that up a little bit and sell it for more than what you bought it for.
Exactly. Instead of rehabbing the property, I rehab the borrower without having to send them to the Betty Ford clinic. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like just kind of, what was the financial hiccup? What happens? You lose your job, you get sick, get divorced, go through COVID. A lot of things happen.
Because a lot of the times the people want to stay there, right? They don't have to move. So it's in their best interest to stay. And if you're willing to work with them on it, they're appreciative of that.
Exactly. And buying that debt at a discount doesn't eliminate what they owe. They still owe the full amount, and back payments, but I now have flexibility because I'm into it at 50 cents of the dollar. I didn't write the note like the bank did at full value. So that gives me some flexibility. Now, if it's vacant, then I'm obviously probably not going to get the borrower back on time. I may then have to look at, okay, what's the foreclosure time frame? How has the bank or the lender already started the foreclosure process? So where is it along the path? Is the borrower, can he or she be reached? Could we maybe negotiate a cash for key situation or a deed in lieu of foreclosure? Do they want to sell it? Because I'm willing to let them sell it off, or even do a short sale to a third party if it's in decent shape. And then if they won't respond, then we've got to go the route to hire an attorney to foreclose if we need to. So there's different things that I look at, but I got specific parameters that for my bids to come in to be accepted, I got to hit my numbers. And that's the great thing is I'm not having to. I'm basing a lot of stuff off just a spreadsheet on online due diligence initially, because a bank, they might send me a list that's 100 or 1,000 or somewhere in between there, different notes. They know I'm not going to drive out and look at all the assets on the front end. I'm going to make some initial offers, and they'll look at them. If we're in the ballpark, they may accept them. Then we go to a much, a 1 week, 2 week, or 1 month due diligence period, depending on how many I'm buying. And then I'm spending money on sending out and getting BPOs, broker price opinions. Then we're pulling title to see what's on the property and making sure, looking at the collateral file. Cause I'm really not buying the property. I'm literally buying the loan file. The right to collect as the bank. This is what I'm buying. And then looking at that and seeing, okay, if everything checks out, then we're wiring funds. And now we're the lender. There's a letter that goes out and says, hey, thanks for not paying me, Mike. Now you're supposed to pay Scott now instead of us. And then that's where we make our money. It's like, okay, like you said, don't care what happened in the past. I get it. Bad things happen. I'm your get out of jail card right now. Do you want to stay or do you want to go? If you want to stay, you got to pay something. If you can't pay, then let's go an alternative solution that's going to be a win-win here. Let you walk away, because a foreclosure will affect a borrower for 7 years. Late pays are only reflect 24 months. And so we've helped. And what's great is about 60 to 70% of the time we're able to keep people in their houses by modifying, and that's really great. It doesn't affect the community in a foreclosure. It keeps them in the house. It's a beautiful thing. The other 30%, we're having to foreclose or take the asset back of some sort. Most of the time, it's kind of friendly. Sometimes, every once in a while, we have that one that they want to fight you and drag out, and we'll end up winning because the bank always wins. And we always double check and talk with our attorneys. Hey, if we have to foreclose, are we going to win this case? Is everything there documented to make sure that we're A-okay?
Thinking about this, I share my story. So I got into real estate a little bit after you, right as we were coming down the roller coaster down the hill. And I was super excited because we bought our first property for $2,000 less than it was a brand new construction townhouse complex. They bought it in 2004. We bought it in 2006 for $2,000 less. It appraised for $7,000 over. And I'm like, hey, we got a great deal, right? This is Mike right out of college, not really understanding how real estate works. We got a good deal. And then I watched all my neighbors short sale and foreclose as the values went to half of what we bought it for. And we decided to stick it out and make payments. That's how we got into investing is kind of accidental landlords. Now we chose to rent it out versus staying there ourselves because we wanted to go, but then we went and bought a short sale on the flip side. So we got a good deal on the short sale on the flip side, allowed us to rent. But I think about all my neighbors that left. I remember I was really good friends with my next door neighbor, and he basically was like, yep, can't make the payments anymore. I'm just going to stick it out until eventually I'm gone, and took off and never talked to him again. But we talked all the time when we were there. And now this, the foreclosure happened and he's gone. And so that's, but he would have loved to stay. It was a 2-year-old, 3-year-old complex, beautiful units, would have loved to stay, but because the value is so low. And I think he lost his job too, just took off, And
that happened to a lot of people there. I mean, we had 15 million homeowners underwater at the peak in 2010, 15 million. Now, people ask me all the time, are we going to see those numbers again? No, I don't think we'll hit 15 million. We'll probably get closer to that, 4 to 5, somewhere about halfway or quarter way there. If we get to 8, it'll be the worst. But it's the commercial debt now that's really affecting more things than the residential debt, kind of the flip flop of that. And commercial affects residential because of people, stuff like that too. But yeah, short sales during that time, that was a big, we were doing negotiating short sales in like 30 different states for realtors and investors back at the time too, helping them out because we knew the ins and outs of dealing with these asset managers. I was negotiating a short sale with the head of loss mitigation for Everhome Bank. And her name was Rachel. I'm gonna tell you last name. She sounded like she was smoking 3 packs a day, stressed out. And we get her on the phone and we've negotiated. I said, well, Rachel, thank you so much. She's like, is this all you do? You just do short sales? I'm like, yeah, we help. We're doing a lot. She goes, well, hang on a second. And she came back on and she goes, I need your help. I got a house that I'm behind and upside down on, and all my team members are in the same book I am. Can you help all of us? They're all with Wells Fargo Mortgage. So we ended up doing 12 short sales in that one department for everybody in Everhome Bank's loss mitigation, and still talk to her every once in a while, which is kind of funny. But a lot of people are hurting there, and it was good. I mean, it's great that you were able to make the payments. Probably the value of that property has probably come back and is worth more now. And same thing here. It was going on in the United States. People that bought, say, a year ago, they might be underwater now. The values have dropped down in some places. Like I live in Austin, Texas. It's one of the most expensive markets out there for the most. I don't buy a lot here in Austin. I buy in a lot of other places because it's more affordable and I get a better bang for my buck. But like my neighbor across the street, he paid the peak, but he was happy because he finally got something. It took him 2 years to finally find something that he could win. His value's down 56 grand. but he got such a low interest rate. He's like, well, I'm not, my time frame is not just to flip this property. I was going to plan on being here for 7 or 8 years. I'm like, well, then just, you can afford the payments, just write it out. That value will come back in 2 or 3 years, and in 10 years, it'll probably double again what it's worth today. You've just got to understand the timing of the market and how everything is. Things go up, things go down, things go back up. And in real estate, they may drop down, but they'll always go back up further than what they did before in most cases.
So for somebody that's considering investing in notes, what are some tips kind of how to get started, maybe how to even research this a little bit more? And then 2, the benefit that you see from that, like what was exciting about you choosing this kind of your niche that you're going to focus on?
So let me answer that question first, and it'll lead into the answer to the first question. So with me, I think one of the biggest expenses that investors or realtors or anything is leads, right? It's all about lead gen. I need to get somebody, a buyer or a seller. Well, if you're an investor, you're looking for deals, right? And many investors are out putting out bandit signs, or they're doing direct mail where they're mailing out thousands of mail pieces, and those have a very low ROI, 1 to 2% for direct mail. Bandit signs, if they get a few phone calls before the zoning department picks them up or whatever, that's a lot of money. And most of the time you're getting one borrower who's in trouble and they have one house, right? So every month you've got to revamp to try to get this. Well, what I liked about note investing immediately is that I didn't have to spend any money on direct mail or my marketing costs were dramatically reduced 90% because I'm not mailing out postcards or letters. I'm literally contacting banks, and I'm contacting internal departments of banks. And when I get the right department, they send me a list of their problem children. It might be one note, it might be 1,000 notes that I can cherry pick from. And this happens every month, every quarter, depending on the lending institution and how often they sell. So that was one thing I loved. I was like, I can do this from my computer. I don't have to go out and knock on doors. And I've been shot at twice knocking on doors for people who are, facing foreclosure, or, in the 120-degree heat of Hades here in Austin in the middle of the summer. I can stay in the AC and do this from a variety of places. So that was the first thing that really excited me about notes. The second thing is the discounts were often a whole lot less. People were just blown away that we could pick up something even today at 30, 35, 40% discount, because market, real estate's so expensive. A lot of cases, well, we're still getting a big discount because we are having to take on that problem child and have to foreclose and make it that thing. Which, when you buy at a bigger discount, when you're in a hot market, that leads to great ROIs. We don't do skinny deals. We're definitely, when we're going to take a note back, we want to see at least a double-digit return, 10, 12% to us after our money costs. If we have to take a property back that we have to foreclose or deed limit, maybe put a little bit of rehab into it or something like that, we want to see closer to a 20% annualized return on a lot of stuff, or greater. Just depends on the market and days on market and that time and stuff. So those are the 3 biggest things that I like about it. Every state's different. That's one thing that you got to be careful of. Buying in California, what you could buy one asset in San Diego, I could buy a whole block in St. Louis, Missouri. You know what I mean? So you got to know states are different. Some have a judicial foreclosure time frame, which is a longer court system foreclosure. Others are non-judicial that are faster, like here in Texas. It could be 30 to 90 days. You got to do some research. That can be overwhelming for people. I've seen realtors and investors, they get a list of 400 notes and literally almost have a breakdown because they're like, all these are deals. I'm like, no, they're not all deals. Know your parameters. Let's run some basic numbers on here. Occupied. Okay, let's take 12 months of P&I times 12 and divide that by what 60% of the balance or the value, and see what kind of ROI. That's a quick number to take a look at. Looking at property taxes. You want to avoid states that have usually higher property taxes if you're going to hold it for cash flow long term. I don't necessarily want to own rentals that turns things into another job. I mean, we've had some, and we'll take some stuff back occasionally that we turn into rental just because the market's a little bit different depending on what rates. Right. I mean, when I was buying notes back when I first started, I was buying like condos in South Florida for $5-10 grand a pop. I didn't mind renting them out at $1,500 to $2,000 a month because I was only paying like 10 to 30 grand for these things. I'm like, it worked for a while, and hey, the borrower's gone, so we'll put a renter in there temporarily while it takes us 18 months to foreclose, and do that kind of stuff. So that's the important thing.
So you don't have to worry about your neighbor listing with a different realtor and being frustrated and upset about that.
Yeah, that is so true. And look, I'm not a realtor. I've toyed with the idea of getting my license because one of the things that we do get a lot of sometimes from banks is different foreclosure or REOs. And if I say, okay, we take our property back, we give you the listing, make it a little bit. But I'm like, I don't necessarily want the extra work. I love working with realtors. There are some investors or educators out there that will sit there and preach, you don't need a realtor, you can do it all yourself. And I'm
Yep.
like, that's the stupidest thing you could say, because a jack of all trades is a master of none. Let the professionals handle it. Your time is not worth going to do an open house or trying to rehab it and sell it at the same time. I mean, realtors are worth their weight in gold because they've got the connections. They've got access to the MLS, which is one of the greatest gold mines of deal flow, is having access to the MLS and all the things that you can pull from there. You just got to know how to use that tool properly and approach it from a little bit different investor mindset. I love realtors, but realtors that are right out of school, they're the inside the box. Anything that doesn't sound like inside the box is, oh, it's illegal, you can't do that. There's a lot of things you can do creatively that are outside the box that are completely legal to make things happen. And you learn that from experience. You learn that from working with other investors that are learning, like subject to investing or wholesaling or doing wraparound mortgages. There's a whole variety of things. There's a golden land of opportunity right now, no matter what's going on with the market, whether it's up or down.
Mhm. And what for thinking about opportunity here. So if I have somebody who's, I'm looking at investing in real estate, or I'm looking at long-term rentals, short-term rentals, whatever, what can you share just in terms of capital needed, kind of getting started? And obviously there's much more to this, and you do a great job training on classes and how to get started and all that, but kind of what can they expect in terms of kind of the capital, maybe the cash flow kind of stuff? Like, what does that look like to where it continues to build and grow over time?
So that's a really great question. Each niche of real estate investing will have different capital requirements. You're going to buy in a multifamily or an apartment complex, much more capital intensive than taking over something that's subject to the existing financing. Okay.
Mhm.
We finance most of our purchase about 95% with other people's money. Using people that have a self-directed IRA, or borrowing people who have retirement accounts, using that money to fund our purchases. So that's one of the most important things you can do if you're going to be a real estate investor, is to understand how to raise private capital and realize that there is trillions of money sitting on the sidelines. One of the things that I think we met originally back in the day off of the thing is I was sitting there showing people how to go to the county records to pull up people that have an IRA account that have used it to buy a rental property, lend money from it, and how in 5 to 10 minutes, you can find several hundred IRA investors who want to invest or looking for deals to invest, right? And that's mind blowing for a lot of people because they don't teach that anywhere.
Mhm.
So that's the thing. And like wholesaling doesn't really require any money. If you just want to flip paper, flip contracts, you can do that. Make sure you double check with your local state, because some cities out there get a little nasty about that. Subject twos are a great opportunity right now, which takes a little bit of capital if you've got to. And what a subject to deal is just for is if you've got a borrower who's maybe gone through a divorce or having to move because of job, and they've got a mortgage with a low rate that wants to walk away from the property, but they can't sell it for, maybe they owe more than the property's worth a little bit more. They can't necessarily sell it because they can't bring the money. We'll step and say, hey, we'll start making your mortgage payment. You're a couple months behind. We'll pay that. You'll just deed the property over to us with your existing financing still in place. So we take over the property subject to the existing debt. And the way to make money on that is, if it's at a low interest rate, you could probably either turn around and offer it owner financing to somebody. So if it's a mortgage is at 2%, you offer it to somebody at 6%. So you're making the different spread in the middle. Or you could turn it, if your mortgage payment PITI is $1,500 a month and market rent's $2,400. Guess what? You turn around and rent it out to somebody at $2,400. You're making a $900 difference. So that's subject to vesting. That's a great time right now, which we hadn't seen that. A great time for that in the past few years, but now with interest rates and some defaults, that's a great thing. That's not a lot of capital, but if you're going to go, you want to go rehab property, well, that's going to take capital. Not because you can use hard money lenders or third party financing a lot of times that will lend on the property and the project, not necessarily on your FICO score, but they'll only lend at 60 to 70% of the value of the property. So if you're buying it at 65%, you need 20 grand or another 10% for repairs. You're going to have to finance that or go borrow money from somebody else out there. So really research and understand the strategy. One of my best bits of advice is join your local real estate club. Meaning there's all sorts of real estate clubs and associations across the country in every different city. But go talk to the experts who are doing deals. And if you want to find the experts and the old investors been around for a market cycle, go to the event, go to the club, and look at the people in the back row, usually the back right-hand corner. Okay, when I was speaking and when I was traveling the country speaking at REIA clubs, that's who I would focus on. When I would wait for everything, I would go and look at the back 2 rows, because if I could win those guys over, I could win. I already went over the entire audience. You know what I mean? But those people, they value their time. They're going to show up. If it's going to value their time, they're going to stay and listen. If it's not, they're going to skedaddle out of that room. But talk to the local investor club association president who's doing this strategy, because there are strategies that work, but they don't always work for every market. And there's a lot of education companies out there that, this will work in your market. Buy foreclosures in Austin, Texas. Well, we have the lowest foreclosure rate in Texas here in Travis County. That's not going to work. And so just educate yourself on the market. What's working in today's world isn't necessarily what was working 2 years, 3 years ago. And that's really the important thing. And if you're going to take counsel or advice from somebody, ask them, how many deals have you done lately in the last year? How many deals have you done in the last 2 years? And or how have you adjusted your your marketing strategies to find deals with the market changing like it is? Those are some questions you really need to ask. And then make your choice. Some people want to do rehabs, other people don't. Some people want to be landlords, other people don't want the job of dealing with people. I like buying notes because I'm not actually dealing with the borrowers. I have a third-party servicing company and attorneys that handle that, so I don't have to deal with that drama.
Awesome. So just real quick then, talk about kind of switching from investing in notes here to building a company and building a brand, because that's something that you've really rolled around note investing. You're the note guy, right? So kind of talk about what's been successful in your business, or what you've done that's been successful in growing your brand and becoming that note guy as you've gone throughout the past 20 years.
So I didn't coin the note guy. All right. It was given to me 4 nights in a row. Okay. So I got asked to speak in San Antonio at a real estate investment club. I got asked the next night to speak in Austin, Texas. So I went to 2 back-to-back nights. I was speaking for an hour on note investing, and I walk in, and one thing that I've been doing was I would do videos, video. The little Dell flip cam. I probably got it around here. I still have it, but I would just do short videos. Or if I get an asset in, I would write it up on the dry erase board and talk about that deal and just share what I was doing, because people liked it, but they didn't understand it. So I had to educate people to understand this niche of note investing to get them comfortable to invest with me. And so I walked into San Antonio, and some guy in the back goes, "Hey, you're that note guy, aren't you, on YouTube?" I'm like, "Yes, I am." Austin, Texas. "Hey, aren't you that note guy?" I'm like, "Yes, I am." Night off, I fly out to LA. I'm speaking in San Diego one night in LA. The next same thing happened. "Hey, you're that note guy." I'm like, "I guess I'm gonna start calling myself the note guy." Because I was doing other things, I was doing some wholesaling and stuff, but that's what really stuck out. And so I was like, okay, so I just said, I got to share my journey. I got to start sharing on a regular basis, because you got to be in front of people. I mean, humans have such low attention spans of 8 seconds. A goldfish has a 9-second attention span. And with social media, where eyes and ears are being distracted on a regular basis with the podcast, videos, TikTok, Twitter, whatever out there. You've got to share what you're doing. And the way it came to me, the smartest marketing mind I ever met is a mentor of mine. His name is Roland Frazier out of San Diego. And I got to work with him a couple of years. He's like, "Scott, are you going to be doing this for just a year?" I'm like, "No." He goes, "2 years?" I'm like, "No, I'm planning on probably being an investor for the rest of my life. Investors never retire. We just get smarter." You know what I mean? And he goes, "You have to keep that in mind, that every video, every marketing piece, every post out there, that's a seed for the long term. You never know who's going to see it. You never know when somebody's going to come across it. It's going to hatch an opportunity of somebody either reaching out to you to get more information, or to invest with you, or to send you a deal." And so you've got to understand that. And so that's the thing that I took, was like, okay, I'm going to share on a regular basis. I'm just going to start sharing videos, sharing deal flow. When Facebook Live came out and Gary Vee made that famous by doing the Ask Gary Vee show, I started doing video every day, a Facebook Live every day about what I was doing. And when I did that, I really saw a skyrocket approach of followers as social media was really taking off then. And that led into us creating the Note Closer Show, which now has 761 episodes. And we were doing a Monday night webinar with students and investors out there talking about deals. I started as a conference call, a party line basically back 13 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It evolved into the Monday Note, which was a webinar, and we rebranded it to Note Night in America. And we've been doing that Monday night, 7 p.m. call, Zoom webinar now for 13 years straight. And that's helped brand and just sharing it, putting it all on YouTube so everybody can see it. And we've embraced podcasting, but we were big into the YouTube video side first off, because video, it's 24-hour a day, 7-day a week advertising. And I think the biggest thing is people understand that I'm just me. I might not be the smartest guy in the shed, but I'm going to shoot you the truth. And I'm not everybody's cup of tea. I screw up. I make mistakes. I'm always glad to admit I screwed up there in this one. Crap, we missed something. Let's get this fixed, Or this deal didn't turn out. We had something happen. Let's go through how we fixed it and how we solved it. Or, hey, don't do that. That doesn't work. That worked 3 years ago. This doesn't work like it is today. So I'm not afraid to ruffle some feathers. I'm not afraid to poke fun at myself. And I think people really appreciate that because everything I do is in the note business. Green and black. Those are our two brands. Everything we see is green. Everything is black. I mean, had email blasts that we send out monthly to asset managers come back. So I was looking for the green email because I know I've got a note that you've been emailing me for 6 years. Now I got something on my desk that I can send you now, and that's just the consistency. I have a realtor friend of mine who's one of the best REO agents in Atlanta. She just recently retired to Florida, but she was working with me, and I said, hey, this is a few years back when Google Plus was around. Google Plus obviously is gone. I said, this great little article, share it on Google Plus. You got to share it everywhere. It's like casting a line or making your net bigger, sharing it everywhere. And she's like, okay, whatever. Well, she did it. And of course, what did she do? She never posted again to Google Plus. A year and a half goes by. She's in Austin, and we're doing like the social media survey. It's like, pull up your accounts and take a look at it. So she pulled up her Google Plus account, and here's this one post from 2 years ago, but it's got 1,800 views on it. And she's like, oh my God. I'm like, imagine if you'd been posting the entire time, how many more views you would have and how many more leads you had gotten by just sharing it where other people aren't. And that's the biggest thing about building a brand is you just got to be consistent, realize it's a long game. It's not a short game, and just keep sharing. And, some people are very tight knit about their best stuff. I'm like, give away your best stuff, because that's when people will realize, hey, this guy or gal, if they give this away for free, now I really want to work with them, because if I've got to pay for something, I know I'm gonna get better service or better quality stuff, whether they're my listing agent or my selling agent, or I'm gonna invest with them. That's one of the biggest things that we get is people say, I've been stalking you for 6 months, or I've been listening to you. They don't call me to just ask questions a lot of times. I mean, they do, but it's all like, hey, I've been following you. I'm ready to sign up for some coaching, or I'm ready to sign up for a class, or hey, I got $100,000 to invest. Can I put it with you? And I'm like, yeah, maybe, go from there. But that's just consistently sharing, just one of the biggest things you can do to find success long term.
A couple of things that you mentioned that stuck with me is, talking about Note Night in America, 13 years. I've worked with a lot of real estate agents and a lot of people in real estate where it's like, I'm going to try this for a month, or I'm going to try this for a couple months. You've been doing that for 13 years. And then the other thing that you shared that's really wise is you said, just because this worked 3 or 4 years ago, it doesn't work now. So that means you have to be doing something for 3 or 4 years, or trying something a certain for 3 or 4 years before you decide it doesn't work. And I think so many people are so impatient because they do 1 or 2 things. I've worked before with an agent that did a mailing for 3 months, didn't see the results, so they stopped doing the mailing. Well, then about 3 months later is when they got a hand raise from that. And it's like, oh, wait a second. Like, I just stopped that 3 months ago, but if I would have continued with it. And so that makes sense. And 2, all the video content you put out, like the 1,700 YouTube videos, people can watch that when you're sleeping. People can watch that when you're on vacation. People can watch that when you're sitting watching a football game, and you're helping to prime the pump for 6 months I've been stalking you, or 12 months I've been watching your stuff, and now I'm ready. You've got to have 12 months of stuff for people to watch to then be ready to raise their hand right away.
So I'm so glad you brought that up. So like Note Night in America, we do that via Zoom. And we try to make it simple. If you go to notenightinamerica.com, it takes you to a Zoom to register. So we try to buy those custom URLs that are easy. But that's changed. That's evolved. I mean, we'd have 200 to 700 people live in a webinar. Well, the one I did Monday night, it's dwindled down. People are tired of Zoom. It's dwindled down to 30 to 50 people live. but I live stream it to YouTube, so we get views on there too. And then we take that video and put it rebroadcast it on YouTube the next day, and that gets more replays. And we take the video and restream it across our LinkedIn and all our other social media, so that gets several hundred views. We take it into a podcast and turn it into an audio podcast. It'll get on average 200 to 500 views in the first month. So if I just did like most people, oh, it's only got 13 people tonight, they stopped doing it. I'm like, it's that hour investment. I'm going to record something, and that while 13 people, I'm very, very grateful for those 13 people that show up live, and I send them an email and I follow up with them. But it's also it's just the tip of the wave. I know that most of the views are going to come afterwards, and if I stop doing it, then I'm really losing out on all that afterwards.
And the other thing to think about too, because I know on YouTube as an example, views tend to be low for some people. It's probably especially people getting started. Of those couple of views, they click on something and go to your website, and then they're going on your website and looking at stuff too. So it's like fishing. You've got thousands of lines in the water, thousands of lures under the water, that eventually something's going to catch a fish. And so if you're just focused on, oh, I only had 5 people watch that video, you might have 5 people watch it on YouTube. But if you're also posting it in all these other places, that stuff starts to add up. And it's doing that for 13 years, like you said.
Yeah. So let me give you a bit of an example. And this is one of the things from Gary Vaynerchuk that stuck with me. You only need to have one view to make it worthwhile. Just one view, not it go viral. But if you take a look at my channel, we hit 1,750 videos in May 2nd. So it's over. We'll just say, if you take 350,000 views, that's what was another milestone we hit, and divide that by 1,700 videos, that's an average of 205, 206 views per video. Okay, not huge. Now I have something like 25,000, 10,000, 15,000, stuff like that. What's funny is this is my second YouTube channel. The first one had 800 videos and got shut down a few years back, so I had to rebuild it to it. But those 205 views a day, that leads to roughly 3 to 4 subscribers per day that come back and watch. And so we average about 6,000, 7,000 views a month on that. And that's the thing. It's like, that's one of my best lead gens, is just dumping content. Somebody will come from it, somebody will comment. And like you said, now I've got 1,700 hooks in the water versus 1 or 2 hooks. You never know what somebody's searching for and what you'll be found for. And it's the most important thing is to be consistent and try to be narrow. I can't say that enough too. Find your 1 or 2 niches and stick to those niches. If you try to, and this is one of the biggest mistakes we see with like real estate podcasters or real estate educators, they try to be a master of every strategy, and you can't be the master of every strategy because everyone's got different timing and marketing and stuff like that. And investors, they sign up for all these classes, but they never have time to implement the strategy or the marketing for one strategy because they're busy going to another class or another workshop. You know what I mean? So pick 1 or 2 niches and just focus on that. Just stick to that. Give that 6 months, 9 months, a year. You know, make sure it's working in the market you're in or what you were focused on. But focus on that. You got to give time for people to see, because 80% of sales are made after the 5th contact, the 5th view, the 6th view. 6 times somebody's seen you to take notice. And that's why we try to speed things up by sharing it everywhere. So at some point, maybe they'll see it once or twice in a day, maybe see it 3 or 4, like, okay, this note guy, I need to spend some more time on because he finally said something that makes sense to me, and I'll reach out to him and go from there.
Real estate agents, are you tired of letting the busyness of life get in your way from achieving your real estate investing goals? I'm super excited to announce we've created the Real Freedom Investor Agent Tribe. It's a place for you to come, get educated, and network with others so that you can make sure that you're hitting your real estate investment goals. So find out more on our website, realfreedom.com. Click on the store link. We've got a membership, we've got a mastermind group, and some private coaching as well. Check it out. I've priced it super low. The goal is to get you in, not have price be a determining factor to keep you from your goals. So come check it out, schedule a call with me, and we're happy to see where your real estate journey is going to take you. So Scott, for people that want to reach out to and learn more, how can they do that, or where can they find you?
Really easy. You can go to our website, weclosethenotes.com, weclosethenotes.com. We got our podcast on there, video, training. If you want to learn more about note investing, I have classes on there, but I'd love to give your audience, we have a 1-day class that we teach called Note Weekend. We teach it usually the 3rd Saturday of the month. It's recorded, so you got to take a Saturday. It's usually $99, but since you're listening to Mike's podcast and you're smart because you're listening to its podcast, and intelligent, and the best looking and most intelligent people out there listen to Mike's podcast here, Real Freedom, okay? You can use the code podcast. Go to noteweekend.com, use the code podcast, and it'll give you the class for free. No cost. You can watch it any time and go from there. So real easy. Noteweekend.com, code podcast, all caps. You get it for free. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me on any of my socials. I'm Scott Carson. Yes, Mike said I got just south of 30,000 followers, connections on LinkedIn too. So it's a great place to connect with me on there too.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Scott, for coming on, kind of sharing your story, why notes are a good investment vehicle for you, and kind of how people can process through choosing an investment lane, and then too, just talking about growing your business through social media. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing.
Hey, honored to be here. One last thing, everybody, make sure you do this. This is the most important thing you get out of this whole episode. We as podcasters love to hear from our audience. If you're listening to the podcast here right now, make sure you hit the subscribe button and then go on over and leave a 5-star review for Mike. We as podcasters love to hear from our listeners, and you can do that. Mike's kicking ass, taking names in the podcast, just delivering amazing wealth. You can take a minute or two to do that for Mike as well.
Because I know how to choose good guests, right?
That's right, baby. That's right. The best guest.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Scott, for coming on. I appreciate it.